Thanks for joining Indivisible. I'm your host, John Stubbins. Thanks for joining us today, America. Today, my guest is Errol Flynn. He's running for Congress in California, District 37. Welcome to the show, Errol. How you doing?
I love that you called me Errol Flynn, in like Flynn.
I had to get that in there. Welcome, Errol Webber.
So, hey, folks, my name is Errol Webber, the Republican candidate for Congress in the 37th. It's right in the middle of LA, and we need a lot of help flipping this district and many of the other districts that are in LA County, and I'm looking forward to all of your support.
Yes, and Errol is an amazing candidate, folks. For people that don't know Errol, he's got an amazing background. Errol, tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
All right, the Cliff's Notes of it is that I came to the U.S. with my family legally in 2002. Got into film, went to film school, studied film there, and right after graduating, went to Africa to go shoot a documentary about musicians with disabilities. That film ended up winning the Oscar for Best Documentary Short in 2010. So, like, first film out of college, wins an Oscar, and then went on to doing many more documentaries about access to healthcare, access to healthcare, access to education, bullying, the school to prison pipeline, U.S. labor movements, and police community relations, many other topics like that, many social issue driven documentaries. And then I got to a point about 2 years ago where I went, what is my next step? How do I take all these learnings that I've had over the years and put it into policy? And I started exploring the option of going into politics. And I thought, it's a great avenue to get into politics, to run in the 37th district right here in LA. And this is how I got here.
And that's why you're the Black Errol Flynn.
Also from Hollywood, yeah.
I did my homework on you, brother. Yeah, fantastic filmmaker, by the way. And if you haven't checked out Errol's documentary, please check it out. By the way, you're going to see at the bottom of the screen, I'm going to be scrolling contact information for Errol's campaign. Make sure that you go to his website. Make sure that you check it out. You can follow him on Twitter. You can see that information below. And I believe you are on Facebook as well. So you're on every platform, right?
Except TikTok.
And thank God you're not. Thank God you're not. Yeah, we're not doing TikTok. No TikTok.
No, we don't need any foreign interference in our election. We saw how bad that was in 2016 and 2018.
That's right. By the way, I'm working now with Trevor Loudon. Mm-hmm. He's a fantastic documentary filmmaker. And we had a show a couple weeks ago where we brought out and exposed, connect the dots on Antifa and BLM to the Chinese Communist Party and what they're doing. And it's just so nasty. Mm-hmm. What are you seeing out there in your district in particular with BLM right now?
I'll tell you right now, I live in the Larchmont neighborhood that is, Maxine Waters, she lives 5 blocks down the street from me. And Mayor Eric Garcetti, he lives 7 blocks down the street from me. And we had BLM folks walking down the street in front of our house. We had folks who looted the house across the street from me. So all of my neighbors were on edge. And then you look further in the LA area, in the Fairfax neighborhood and in Beverly Hills and in Santa Monica, where people are taking liberties with destroying property and looting stores and destroying businesses. And that is on top of the 3 months of lockdowns that happened prior. So imagine spending a third of the year in lockdown because of government overreach. And then on top of that, in even further business peril because of all these businesses that have been destroyed, like completely destroyed, wiped out, cleaned out because of all of these protests, which really all devolved into rioting and looting.
Sure.
So it's been bad for California. And then as soon as Californians started getting back on their feet, a couple of days before 4th of July, California Governor Gavin Newsom, he instituted an executive order closing all restaurants and bars. And this would have been one of the biggest money-making weekends. This past weekend would have been one of the biggest money-making weekends in California, and businesses weren't even able to take advantage of it. So it's just like it begs the question, what are these politicians doing? Are they deliberately trying to destroy businesses and hurt the economy just to spite Trump?
Yes.
And it begs the question, where is their moral compass if they are willing to use the American people as pawns in their big scheme as a means to an end? That's disgusting.
Yeah, it's when you think about it, you think the harm that's been caused. It's like even in New York, when we were watching the first couple of days of riots and looting, you remember whether it was Gucci, Nike, iPhone, Rolex, all of those stores were cleaned out. I'm assuming the same kind of thing is happening there. My question to you is, with your thumb on the pulse of the people there and on the ground, what are you hearing from the people about these protests?
So I hear from business owners in my district who, when I ask them, are they going to be continuing to vote Democrat over and over again, and then tying the current riots to the Democrats and their consistent policies of allowing for criminality to happen in California, they're like, no, they're not going to keep voting Democrat, because if they keep voting Democrat, they're just going to keep setting themselves up for failure. The other thing that I'm hearing from people is that a lot of folks are ticked off about not having a job. And they're also ticked off at the fact that they're not getting any more $1,200 stimulus checks. And I'm thinking to myself, why on earth would we be handing out any more $1,200 stimulus checks after they just destroyed the country? Like, no.
No.
Yeah, actually, no. Be printing any more funny money out of thin air and driving up inflation. Now, here's the messed up part. Federal financial appropriations starts in the House. All appropriations bills start in the House. And who is in control of the House right now? The Democrats. So here they are with President Trump at the helm. They imperil a country with rioting and looting. They shut down the country with the COVID shutdowns. And then they pass these federal spending of $3 trillion here, and let's do another $2 trillion here. And then who is painted into a corner to have to sign these things? President Trump. So now all of this extra trillions of dollars that is added to our deficit looks like it's President Trump's fault.
Right.
But ultimately, it is a failure on the state level for the state government to address these issues. And now it's really sad. It's really sad what's going on, and it's time to get all these Democrats out, like really, because the in LA is bad. In Seattle, they allowed a whole city within a city to build itself. In Minneapolis, they allowed it to burn to the ground. In Detroit, it's just as bad. And one of the worst cases we have is on the other coast in New York, where you have New York Governor Cuomo and New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio releasing criminals en masse and acting surprised that they reoffend almost immediately, and then shutting down businesses, defunding the police, stripping away police, and then using whatever police they still do have left to go oppress the Jewish neighbors in New York City. So you have a trampling on First Amendment rights of freedom of speech and assembly and press, and freedom of religion and the freedom to redress their government for grievances. You have a trampling down on the Second Amendment here in California, where they release criminals, 5,000 criminals from the LA County jails, and then in the next breath, they try to shut down the gun stores. You have infringements on Fourth Amendment rights, people trampling on privacy. So we're just watching the Democrats just trample on the Constitution every single day. And then they say that they're the ones who care about the Constitution. Get out of here.
Yeah, they're out of their mind. And, you know, I don't know if you saw this, but Minneapolis is already seeking a bailout.
Oh, yeah, they want a bailout for their misgivings. So here go the Democrats again. They make individual decisions, and expect group responsibility. Every single time they make an individual decision and it's short-sighted, they don't see an issue beyond their nose, and then the moment that the issue blows up in their face, they go and ask for help. The same thing happens with every other liberal policy. You make an individual choice and then you depend on public funding to take care of your problem. Whether it's welfare, whether it's student loan forgiveness, or whether it's a bailout after you allow your city to destroy itself.
You know what's crazy, Errol? If you think about this, I don't care what the issue is. I don't care what the conversation is. Every single thing, every discussion, the Democrats resist. It doesn't matter what it is.
They don't even let you get to talk. They don't get to talk.
Yeah, it's the most crazy thing. And here's the craziest thing. They try to pigeonhole us, and I'm talking about conservatives, Christians, Republicans, veterans, military personnel, middle America, right? They try to poison the well into making everybody believe that we're all racists. And yet here guys like you and I, guys like you, me, Leon Benjamin, I have so many black friends. I have a black family, and then they try to point the finger at us and say that we're racist, and we say, no. We're gonna flip the script. I want
to play a game with you. So it's a game called Who Did It? And I want you to just respond in one word. You ready? So who owned slaves?
Democrats.
Who killed Abraham Lincoln?
Democrats.
Who attacked abolitionists?
Democrats.
Who are the Confederates?
Democrats.
Who started the Civil War to keep slavery alive in the name of states' rights?
Democrats.
Who founded the Ku Klux Klan?
Who hung people from the trees? Democrats.
Okay.
Who burned up churches? Democrats.
Who burned down Black Wall Street? Who killed JFK and Martin Luther King?
Who's funding BLM? The Democrats.
1994 crime bill. We could go on for days. But here's the crazy part. Who do they consider racists? Republicans. They have some nerve, and it's time to get all of them out of office because none of them deserve to be in office right now. None of them. Well,
it's interesting. Do you know Leon Benjamin by chance?
I know the name.
Okay, Leon is a wonderful pastor out of Virginia. He's on President Trump's spiritual advisory board.
That's why.
And he's also one of the leaders of the Opportunity Zones.
Yes.
And I'm working with Leon.
Tim Scott has been leading the charge on Opportunity Zones.
Exactly. So I'm working with Leon. We're trying to get a meeting with the president where we can come in and lay down some of this stuff, because the bottom line is people like you and I and many, many millions of Americans, we know what the Democrats are doing. It's now time to call them out on national television, and it's time to embarrass them. Because they've lied to the American people for way, way too long, and we're tired of it.
We are tired. Now, one of the things that I've noticed about conservatives is that we are the peaceful bunch, and as such, every time that opposition comes our way, we go the peaceful route in pushing back. It's time for us to become more active in pushing back. Now, I don't condone violence, but we need to defend ourselves, and also we need to defend our country. And when we see nonsense happening, especially from our elected officials, we need to make sure that we come out in mass and vote them out. And also the voters in deep blue areas, like in Los Angeles, like in California, the Republicans and conservatives here in the California area, we need to recognize that even though in the past, California has been a blue state, one of the things we need to do, we need to come out in mass, because right now California has on the books a law that says that they'll be handing all of their electoral votes to the winner of the national popular vote. Now,
I saw that.
Yeah. Now, even though a particular district in California may not get a Republican as a congressional member, all of their Republican votes count toward the national popular vote. So every Republican and everyone who cares about this country needs to ensure that they get out and vote.
That's right. That's right. By the way, are you connected with Congressman Nunes?
Congressman Nunes, yeah, he's up the street. Well, his district is up the street. I can connect with him. Yeah.
He's a great guy. I had him on my show a couple months ago, and this is right when COVID was starting to take off and really get entrenched in our community. Here's a question for you, and I can't remember who it was. Who's running against Maxine Waters out there?
A guy named Joe Collins. He's a military veteran of almost 14 years. Yeah, he's in the district immediately south of mine. So my district has the Beverly Hills area. It has the Crenshaw neighborhood. It has Westwood, Culver City, and parts of Inglewood. And then his district has the lower half of Inglewood and Carson going further down into Torrance.
How are you getting along with Joe? Do you guys talk?
Yeah, we do talk. We actually collaborate a lot on campaign events. Like we do a lot of Open Up California events a couple of weeks ago. Now that campaigning is happening in earnest, we each have different campaign strategies for our district. So he's been very busy down in his district with his boots on the ground efforts. And I've been very busy up here with my top level voter education components that I'm putting together.
Sure. Yeah, I tell you, I'd love to have in the future. I'd like to have, as we get closer to the election, I'd like to have you and Joe on together to talk about this, because we've got to take Maxine Waters down.
Yeah. You need to take out Karen Bass, the chair.
You need to take out Karen Bass as well. By the way,
when you think about it,
I was going to ask you, how's your ground game, Errol, out there right now?
Okay, so we don't actually hit the ground for another couple of weeks. One is many people are, because we're in such a deep blue area, people freak out when strangers come to their door.
Sure.
During this whole COVID thing. And it's convenient because the way I'm working it out right now is that we need to reach all of our constituents digitally first and then hit the ground running and do the overlap. So everybody's hit at least once or twice. We have about 300,000 houses to hit. So I'm looking to mobilize an army of over 100 people to go door to door. And I'm excited for that work that needs to be done.
Yes, yes. I want to talk a little bit about your campaign strategy. What are the issues? Let's talk about maybe the top 3 issues that are on your board, things that have to change as far as Errol Webber is concerned right now.
You make a very good point. There are the things that are in your face, like homelessness, but then there are other things that the only way for people to pay attention to it is for them to recognize the context of how they got to where they are. So I'm going to give an example. This district is 25% Black and it's 25% white and it's 39% Latino and it's 9% Asian. And the median income is around $46,000 a year. Now imagine a district that has Century City and Beverlywood in it and West LA and Culver City in it, where people are making $120,000 or more. And then you ask yourself, if the district is making a median income of $46,000 a year, you're telling me that half the district lives well under $46,000 a year. Now, how do we get to this point? For us to recognize that, we need to rewind a couple decades. Go down memory lane with me down to 1934. So this is right on the heels of the Great Depression. And Democrat president, what was his name? FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He signed into law the National Housing Act of 1934. Well, you see, what that allowed was for Americans to take advantage of low interest federal housing loans. And that was one of their strategies for spurring jobs in the economy. But what ended up happening is that only 2% of these low interest federal housing loans went to Black families. And only 1% of these low interest federal housing loans went to Black families in redlined areas. So here we have in my district, the Crenshaw neighborhood, the Baldwin Hills neighborhood, Leimert Park, Inglewood, all of these areas were historically redlined districts where Black people primarily were unable to get low interest federal housing loans to buy a house or renovate their current house. So they were so they were relegated to getting high interest private loans if they could get that, or selling their house and getting out. So here we have people who have been financially and economically locked out of their own district. And then you fast forward a couple of years and you have a poor education system and segregation. You fast forward another decade and you have the war on drugs. You fast forward another decade and we're into the 90s with the 94 crime bill. You fast forward another decade and you're in the middle of the welfare dependency that's happening in all over America, but primarily in LA. So you see, historically, the Democrats have been economically locking people out of this district, both financially and educationally. And one of the biggest things we need to do to empower people in this district and all across America is to first work on education. So all of that to get to, we need to make America educated if we want to move forward as a country. If you want to economically empower our people, we need to ensure that we start with education first. So let's start with middle school, with financial literacy and with skills training. Yes, as early as middle school. And also teaching advanced investment training and starting businesses in high school, and also teaching yet another trade in high school. That way, by the end of high school, people are advanced, they have advanced training in economics and also have training in 2 skills that they can then take and do whatever they want with. So if they want to go to private college or a public college, or go to a trade school after high school, or go straight into the job world, they are fully to take charge of their life. And that is what is missing here in this district: a poor education system, limited options, and a lack of economic opportunity. And that's why we're grateful for things like opportunity zones.
And let me just say something before you continue on with your agenda. Number one, we need to get American history, U.S. history back in our schools. That missing, it's obviously, when you look at these liberal indoctrination campuses, I don't know if you know my friend Mark Joseph. He produced No Safe Spaces with Adam Carolla, Dennis Prager. Free speech, okay, on college campuses. As you know, it's not existent now because there's only one point of view, and it's a liberal indoctrination from the moment that it's happening even before you get on college campus. So we've got to get American history back in our schools, and free speech is a must. Yes, we have to fight for that, number one. And then here's the other point. I'm tired of our tax dollars. We keep talking about education, and we've been throwing lots and lots of money.
And this billions is not money, but keep going.
Yeah, just so much. And what has it gotten us? In Baltimore, as you know, 13 schools, not one student was proficient in math or English. Not one. So
that is sad.
This is happening all over. I wanted to talk about that.
So I want to talk about, I will engage you on this. There's a part of my campaign platform that deals with the importance of school choice, because one of the things that is lacking is a parent's agency to choose what's best for themselves and their children. When it comes to medical freedom, but we can touch on that later. And when it comes to education, when you have a poor and failing public school, we need to stop pumping our tax dollars exclusively into that. We need to ensure that we keep the aspirations of our youngest in mind when we make decisions as to what's best for their life. So for me, when I was growing up, I was really into aviation. I wanted to become a pilot. And then when I turned 15, I was in church and was introduced to video, broadcast video, and was really hooked on video and loved it. And I then went on to study film in a film school. Well, you see, every kid has an aspiration. I remember when my brother was growing up, he wanted to be a police officer when he was growing up. All these amazing jobs. Now, what we need to do is we need to make sure that our children have the opportunity to go to the school that gives them the best shot at their aspirations. So whether that is going to a more robust public school, or going to a private school, or going to a charter school, or going to a parochial school, or homeschooling, Parents
Yeah.
need to retain that agency to choose which type of education is best for their children and where, so that child has a good shot at the future.
Yes, and I'll go back to something that you said earlier that's crucial. And President Trump brought it up even before he was elected. This is back in 2015. And he hit on these points. Technical school, welders, plumbers, different skill sets. Like you said, look, if you want to go to law school, great. If you want to go to film, great. But it's not a bad thing, right, to have other skill sets.
Right. So I'll give you a great example. Right now, back in the day when I was 14, I was a carpenter's apprentice. At 16, I actually got into the landscaping industry. At 15, I started doing video production. I started doing web design. I started doing photography. So as I grow up, I have all of these different skills, and I've been able to pivot every time something new has come my way. So if an adversity comes my way, I can just switch and pivot. It's really easy for me to do that. And if one skill is no longer in need in my particular area or for my particular life, that's fine. I can just pivot to doing something else. When you're out, you don't have the ability to pivot. And life is going to come at you fast sometimes. And we need to have people who are financially and economically and educationally mature enough to be able to pivot as life comes at them.
Yes. Yeah. See, I'm in full agreement with you, Errol. The more skill sets that we give our young people, the better off they're going to be. And when they get out into the workforce, okay, and they have a philosophy degree from Harvard, okay, and they can't find a job, and they're wondering why they can't find a job because no one's hiring philosophers, okay, then maybe if they have a plumbing or an engineering or a welding degree, something in a trade school, right, that may not require 4 years of college, but a skill set that they can learn that is beneficial, it's tangible, and one that they can use to support their family and to support their dreams.
I'll give you a great example. There are a lot of liberals right now who will get degrees in things like liberal lesbian dance theory or something like that.
Right. Which there's nobody hiring for.
But the point I'm trying to get at with this is these are the same liberals who are pushing for green energy. But you know, you could take a 2-week training on how to install solar panels, and you could be making $25 to $75 an hour at a trade that would benefit the very things that you're pushing for. So if you're pushing for all this green energy stuff, then at least take on a trade that would help you in that. It's just ridiculous.
You're making me crack up over here because you speak truth, brother. You're speaking truth. I love it. Tell me a little bit more about your agenda aside from education. What else do you see on the ground that's got to happen out there in California?
Very important. So over the past month, we have seen a great divide happening when it comes to police-community relations. And one thing I need to say to preface before I start talking is that police are not separate from the community, but they're an integral part of the community. And by demonizing the police, you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. So over the past few weeks, we've seen efforts happening on the ground in front of Mayor Garcetti's house where they've been calling for the defunding of the police. Currently, the LAPD's budget, I believe, is $3 billion, and they want to reduce it by 90%. They want to defund the police and remove the police from communities. Let us take a couple of case studies from, I don't know, Michigan and Minnesota and New York, where they already started removing and defunding their police. And we see so many people getting shot. And now that things are coming to a head, little 8-year-old girls and 4-year-old kids getting shot, now they're freaking out. Come on, folks, we tried to warn you. This is a society where liberal lawmakers have been granting amnesty for criminality for way too long, and now it's coming to a head. Here's another thing to keep in mind. If you want to fix police-community relations, you need to actually follow through on the things that you say you want. You want your police officers to look like your community. It involves you joining your local police department. So my solution for police community relations is not to defund the police, and it's not to strip away any current law enforcement, but to get more community collaborators on board, for example, in the LAPD Reserve and other police departments within the department, to ensure that we have greater police community relationships. We have this thing that happens every year. It's called National Night Out. It's one night per year or one evening per year where police get together with the community, and there are many activities that they can participate in and all that. I think National Night Out shouldn't be one time a year. It should be an everyday occurrence. Let me say that again. It should be an everyday occurrence. We should be fostering positive police community relations on an everyday basis, actively, very visibly on an everyday basis. You say you want accountability and to build trust between police and the rest of the community. Well, part of building that trust and accountability is having more members of the community not be auditors of the law enforcement, but become law enforcement officers themselves, because they go through the training as well. They see what it takes to be a police officer. They see the dangers that police have to go through, and they also get to go on ride-alongs and get a taste of what type of trauma police officers have to experience on a daily basis, and the type of trauma that the community faces on a daily basis. Because many people have only been seeing policing through their little window on the world from the safety of their house or from the vantage point of a protest or a riot, but they never see what police community relations is like from the police side.
Right.
It's important for us to get more members of our community involved in becoming police officers and or just being a community collaborator with the police to ensure that we can continue to build stronger relationships. So let's not defund the police.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. It's almost as though this entitlement culture and these people that are out there, well, let's be clear. A lot of these people that are doing what they're doing in the streets, this is about Marxism. This is about sowing chaos. This is about destroying America. For other people who just don't want police to kill someone, and I understand that, but what those people don't understand and what's getting lost in the messages is that happens so rarely. Okay. You know, by the way, are the Seattle police, are they even back in their precinct yet? I mean, because far as I understand, they're not. And I got to tell you something, and because you're absolutely right. We look at this thing, and I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about people out there that hate the police, that are calling for defunding police. They're looking at this through a lens as though the police are outside of us. When these people that are in law enforcement, they have families, they have kids that are integral parts of our community. They are not outside of us. Okay. And they're being treated like they're trash. And it's inexcusable. And that has to stop, because I'll tell you right now, this is my feeling on this, and I want to see what you think, Errol. To me, and I've been at last couple shows we've been discussing this. To me, it seems like, and it's just common sense, the criminals, the people that want, you know, Marxism and reverse racism and all these other things, they don't want the police around so that no one's there to check them on their criminal behavior. That's the reason they want to defund the police, so that they can be criminals without any opposition. That should be common sense. People should see that.
And then you have calls for dismantling economic and social systems by our congresswoman who got the world handed to her on a silver platter, Ilhan Omar.
Yes.
She came here as a refugee. America took her in. America took care of her. America elevated her and empowered her. And then she turns around and sows hatred for the very country that saved her and her family.
Do you know why?
Please share.
It's called Islamic Jihad. It's Islamic Jihad.
Mm-hmm.
And in particular, because I've studied this for probably 15 years. I'm a military veteran myself. And bottom line is, this is stealth jihad, which is part of Islamic Jihad. And the way to perform or execute stealth jihad is to infiltrate our schools, infiltrate our government, infiltrate our communities. Omar should be ashamed of herself. To me, she should be arrested immediately for treason, because you're right, Errol. We took her in. We gave her everything, and she spits in our face.
And it's disgusting. We have politicians like this all across the country who are working with foreign powers to destroy America from within. I want to take this home to my district. You see, a couple of weeks ago, the Biden campaign started vetting my political opponent for the vice president spot, because the Democrats are all about identity politics. So they wanted to find a woman to be the running mate, and they wanted a Black woman to be the running mate. And Kamala Harris is too dirty. And what is that lady down who will not concede? The Georgia governor.
Abrams.
Yeah, Stacey Abrams. And they vetted her as well. But then they also went after my opponent, Karen Bass. And turns out, and we've been sitting on this information just waiting to strategically drop it. And we know that my opponent is at the very least a communist sympathizer, if not a communist herself. And then her connections to Cuba and their Communist Party and how much she holds Fidel Castro in high regard, it's kind of disgusting and alarming. And that person is the figurehead of the Congressional Black Caucus, the figurehead of generational Black victimhood. The same person who, for the past 20 years in California politics, hasn't done much, if anything, for her district, but line her own pockets.
Exactly.
But we'll look for that throughout the campaign. We'll make sure the world knows about her throughout the campaign.
Yes. Yes. And I'll go even further, Errol. When you guys get out there and you start your ground game, this is very important. Just lay it out there, because here's the deal. And I don't care if it's Los Angeles, because I used to live in California. I don't care if it's Los Angeles, if it's San Francisco, Seattle, Minneapolis, Chicago, New York, Detroit, all these cities, DC, all of these cities have one thing in common. They're all run by Democrats, number one, and they're all failures. And they've been failures for a long, long time. So the most important message to me, to the community on the ground, is to let them know the Democrats, you keep voting for them, and they have done nothing. Nothing.
I want to share something. I want to share
for
something.
You, the people.
Before I started campaigning, I went through the district polling folks. I polled hundreds of people, asking them basic questions like, do you know who your congressperson is? 99% of respondents can't tell me. Do you know who your state senator is, your state assembly person is, the governor? They can't tell me who these people are. An alarming instance happened in October of last year. There was an event in the middle of the Crenshaw neighborhood. It's called Taste of Soul, where they shut down 3 city blocks, and it's music, food, entertainment, all that. And then there's a row of political tents for elected officials. So I went and stood in front of the tent for Karen Bass, my political opponent. And I asked passersby, with her name above my head, do you know who your congressperson is? And they looked at me and could not tell me who their congressperson is. And then I asked them, did they vote in the last election? And 50% of the respondents said yes. So here we have people who don't know who their elected officials are to save their life, and they just go to the polls and vote D down ticket. And then they're like, oh, I did my social justice good for the year by voting Democrat straight ticket. And then they wonder why their children are being taught sex ed. And then they wonder why vaccines are being forced on them. Then they wonder why they're being stripped of educational freedom and medical freedom. Then they wonder why they just got tricked into approving state legislature that can increase taxes at its own whim. Just increase gas taxes whenever it feels like it. Yeah. So now the cost of gas is higher, on top of all of the business regulations that are needed for running a business in California. So you have crazy high taxes. You have business regulations out the wazoo. 1,800 businesses leaving California in the past year. And all of those businesses that leave California, remember, it's not just the business owners leaving, but it's also the many tens of thousands of workers who used to work in businesses, many of whom were the breadwinner in their family, suddenly out of work. Now you have so many more families that much closer to the poverty line. And that is a dangerous thing to have in California, especially when you already have over 129,700 homeless people recorded in California.
That's crazy.
Now, I want to bring up with homelessness really quickly, because you mentioned you're a veteran. How do you feel about the fact that out of the 60,000 homeless people in LA County, 1/3 of them are homeless veterans? Think about it.
It makes me sick.
Imagine many tens of thousands of people, patriots, wrote a blank check up to their life for this country. And how does this country turn around and serve them? By leaving them destitute to literally rot to death on the street because of homelessness. Now, we have a great president who is working on VA choice and VA accountability.
Thank God.
Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles has one of the biggest VAs in Santa Monica. That VA falls within the district of Ted Lieu in the 33rd Congressional District, and my district runs adjacent to it, the 37th Congressional District. We share a neighborhood called Westwood, and right in that area is a place called Pride Row. Pride Row, it's kind of like Skid Row, but it's for homeless veterans, where different organizations have donated uniform tents that are kept in great levels of order along the streets of Westwood. But the thing is, we need to ensure that our congressional members and on the state level, our state assembly members and state senators are working in the best interests of our veterans. I want to share a disheartening story I came across while canvassing the district back in February of this year, right before the elections. I was going door to door, hitting 400, 600 houses a day. And I had a conversation with some folks in my district. They were standing on the sidewalk. I was sharing with them my campaign materials. And I asked them if they already voted, because in California, you can vote for the 10 days up to election day. So you have 11 days of voting that you can vote. And they said that they had already voted, and they voted for my opponent, Karen Bass. And then I told them about Karen Bass's voter record, about how she routinely, without fail, votes nay on every military appropriations and veteran-centric bill that comes through Congress. Yep. So here you have military veterans who are in the district who vote for Democrats, and then those Democrats come back and mistreat their own brothers and sisters in arms.
They lied to them.
Something we need to educate everybody on.
They lied to them, and then on top of that, like you said, and here's the other thing: the homeless problem in LA, San Francisco, Seattle again. There's no. It's not a coincidence that the sanctuary city issue is tied directly to that, because when you protect illegal aliens, when they come in, not only do they take the jobs of Americans, but then you see in the community the people that are suffering, those families that have nothing, those families that end up sleeping in a tent. Now, we know that not all of those people are veterans, and we also know that there are a lot of those people that are in these homeless camps, not the veteran camps, but just these regular homeless camps that want to be there. They don't want to work. You know, they want to shoot up. But as you also know, in LA, it's infested with rats. It's infested with needles and blood and urine and feces, all going now into the water supply. Okay. Which is there's consequences to these decisions that these Democrats make. And people it makes you wonder, when will it dawn on them that things need to change? When they start dying from drinking the water? Is that what it's going to take? Or one more thing, or is it going to take one of their loved ones being shot and killed by an illegal alien? What's it going to take?
I have a great friend of mine, and she's endorsed me as well. Her name is Agnes Gibney. She is an angel mom running for Congress out in the 31st Congressional District. And one of the biggest platform planks that she's running on, and one of the big platform planks that I'm running on as well, is the need for legal immigration.
Yes.
I like to bring up the fact that a failure to address key federal issues on the federal level has a negative rippling effect on state level issues when it comes to quality of life. So when we complain about homelessness, when we complain about job theft, when we complain about wage suppression, when we complain about drug use, when we complain about mental health, we all have to recognize that all of these things stem from a failure on the federal level to address border security and immigration.
Exactly.
If you don't have a strong border, you allow for more drugs to become accessible on our streets. When you don't have a strong border and good immigration policies and e-verify, you allow more people who are in the country illegally to take jobs that could go to American citizens, while simultaneously suppressing wages because they're willing to work for less pay. Right now, the United States has been on lockdown in many states for about 4 months. California since March 15th. Well, as America is getting back on its feet, every new job that's created needs to go to American citizens. We need to learn this lesson and get jobs back to American citizens, and also begin the process or continue the process of incentivizing bringing businesses back to the United States, because we need to learn from our mistakes of outsourcing businesses to other countries. You see, when you have high taxes and ridiculous regulations, many business owners, unscrupulous ones, may resort to hiring workers under the table, which contributes toward job theft and wage suppression. They may also outsource some of their business operations or all of their business operations to other countries, which is how you end up with over 170 different prescription drugs and medical devices being made in China. And we saw how dangerous it is to have the fickle China, the emotionally fickle China, being in control of the exports of these much needed drugs, that they held up many of these exports throughout the past 4 months, just to spite America. Do we want to put ourselves in a position where we're handing that much leverage to another country?
No.
So we need to work to bring these businesses back to the US, incentivize them coming back to the US, and let American business owners know that they're welcome to do business here. I'm great that we were able to reduce taxes significantly with the 2017 tax plan, but it's time for us to do more to make our business owners know that, hey, America's open for business and you're welcome to bring your operations back.
Yeah, and I'll say this. If this virus has taught us anything, it's that we need to be making our own drugs here. Okay. Correct. We don't want, and it's the same philosophy with our military. Do you want your enemy making your airplane parts, your fighter jets, your sub parts for your submarines? No.
No, I'm glad everything's being made here.
That's right. And the same thing goes for medication. We don't want to rely on China or Russia or Iran or anyone, people that would have us die, that want to do us harm. We don't rely on that. And by the way, while I'm thinking of that, I want to give President Trump credit for so many things that he's done for the Black community, but also for immigration. He stopped foreign workers from coming over right now, put a cease on that. And then number two, that wall is going up. Another 250 miles were built. I'm sure you saw it over the last couple of weeks, even before Mount Rushmore speech on July 3rd. So we're very excited about that. Before we're getting close to, we've got about 9 minutes left. What else is important to you, Errol, that you must get across to the people of Los Angeles?
One of the things that we need to do is we need to have accountability on all levels. Accountability in our family, accountability in our local government, accountability for state level government, and accountability in our federal government. And I'm going to go through the processes of this. In building accountability within ourselves, we as Republicans believe in individual rights, individual liberties, and individual responsibility. That is the key one right there, individual responsibility. Yes. For too long, the Democrat plan has been group responsibility for individual actions, which only results in fiscal waste, fraud, and abuse. We see it happen all over. Now, in instilling individual responsibility and accountability for self, we need to start developing a culture of two-parent households, bringing parents back home, bringing that structure back home, because that structure then gets taken to school by these children, and that structure helps these children facilitate them learning. Because if you don't have structure, your children will just be constantly in detention or being suspended or being out of school or not wanting to go to school. So let's build that structure at home. And then at school, we need to ensure that we have accountability for our teachers, so parents know what is being taught to their children. Parents have a right to choose what's best for the education of their children. Then, on top of that, we need to make sure that our local government is held accountable. We cannot have local governments that release inmates in mass and then try to shut down gun stores. We need to ensure that we retain our right to keep and bear arms, because it is not just for hunting and for self-defense and for sports. The primary reason of the Second Amendment is to push back against a tyrannical government.
Yes.
So we need to ensure that we maintain our ability to hold our government accountable. Then on the state level, we need to make sure that our state lawmakers are not making life difficult and infringing on life, liberty, and our pursuit of happiness. Everyone comes here to America or lives here in America is trying to experience their definition of the American dream. And we cannot have state level lawmakers who are at every turn trying to clamp down on our American dream and our pursuit of the American dream.
Yes.
And on the federal level, we need to ensure that we have accountability to mitigate waste, fraud, and abuse. If I remember correctly, our federal government burns through $17 billion every day. A huge chunk of that is waste, fraud, and abuse. There are a couple of things that need to happen. On the federal level, we need greater accountability on how dollars are spent. Additionally, and many of my congressional associates who are running for districts around me are saying this, is that we need to begin the process of pushing for term limits, because we've seen what happens with entrenched Democrats, well, entrenched politicians to begin with,
sure,
power for 2, 3, and sometimes 4 decades, who have gotten comfortable with fighting for power to keep their own seat rather than fighting for the constituents that they represent.
Yeah, it's about lining their own pockets.
It's about lining their own pockets, and even my political opponent is lining her own pockets. Maxine Waters is lining her own pockets. Nancy Pelosi is lining her own pocket, and many other congressional representatives are doing the same thing while being in California or federal politics for 20 years. Karen Bass was in California politics for a decade. Now she's been in Congress for a decade. 2 decades in California politics, and your district still looks disheveled as it is.
Right.
You still have whole sections of the district that were historically red line districts that are still in shambles. And then President Trump comes along with opportunity zones. And if you look at the opportunity zone map, it almost exactly overlaps the redlining map from 1930s to 1950s. So here we have President Trump undoing the many decades of damage that the Democrats have been doing to the district. And then they want to demonize President Trump and the Republicans.
No.
The damage that they've been doing to their communities for decades, for over a century. So it's time for us to hold our federal elected officials accountable.
Absolutely. And back to a couple things real quick. Number one, the I don't know if you saw this book. Tucker Carlson's been talking about it. I think it's called The Fragility of White Guilt or White People, or they want to bring this book into schools across the country. I don't know if you've heard about this. They want to teach our kids in school. So this is basically reverse racism. They want to take this book and embarrass white kids in front of black kids to make them.
Done that enough already with all this kneeling that's going on, but
I mean, it's absolutely crazy. And you hit on something that's near and dear to my heart. We have a men's ministry called The First Hour, and Leon and I are going to be introducing that into the opportunity zones. Great literature to bring these young boys, young men back to God, especially the ones that have no fathers, because we have a fatherless issue in America right now.
We do.
I don't care what the community is. Now, in the black community, the rate is 74%. So that means 3 out of every 4 households that are black don't have a father.
Yep.
Let that sink in.
Let that sink in.
Okay. The white community, it's near 40%. All of these figures, if you go back to the 50s, the 60s, it was nowhere near that. Nowhere near that. Well under, I know in the white community, probably like 3%. In the black community, probably 5%. These percentages have grown because of the Great Society, Lyndon B. Johnson, introducing welfare, food stamps, making that daddy. And the bottom line is, it failed. It failed. The Democrats failed you, America.
Yep. You got it right.
So, look, that's an issue that if it doesn't change, we're not going to have a country. That is one of the biggest issues.
I am heartened to know that many Americans are waking up. Many people who have been towing the line between Democrat or Republican, and they haven't figured out what to choose for themselves. They're finally recognizing the tyranny of the left, and we are looking forward to more people voting Republican this election cycle. But we cannot use this as a reason to be complacent. We all need to do our part to help our local and regional congressional representatives get into office. Because what happened in 2018 should not have happened. Yes, there was ballot harvesting that happened in California that was responsible in part for flipping, I believe, 6 or 8 districts in California, which contributed toward us losing the House.
Sure.
When we lost the House, all of the things that we had in place to pass through the House and pass through the Senate and get to the president's desk, that got hindered by all of these leftist policies that are piling up on Mitch McConnell's desk right now. And thank God for Mitch McConnell's bravery to just like not even hear any of these destructive pieces of legislation on the Senate floor. So we need to all do our part as America-loving patriots to ensure that we go out and vote this election cycle.
Amen to that, brother. Amen to that. Folks, I hope you've enjoyed my guest today, Errol Webber, or as I like to call him, the Black Errol Flynn. and by the way, Errol, I don't know if you know any about my background in film and television, but that is my background. And I work with Mark Cook at Prelude Pictures. And we did Lost in Space. We worked with Mel Gibson on Passion of the Christ. Black Dog. We did a documentary called Running the Sahara. And our next project coming up is the George Jones story. But what's interesting is I'm also working with Sidney Powell, who's a good friend of mine. We're adapting both of her books for television and film. And I love the documentary style. I have a feeling that the two of us are going to be talking quite frequently, brother. So I'll make sure that Eugene hooks us up. He's a great right-hand man to yours. I'm glad that glad that you have
give me 10 seconds. I'd like to do this. Back in last year in May, I was going through DC. I had a meeting with the Trump campaign, and afterward I went to Trump International Hotel in DC. And I'm one of those networkers who I'll work a room until my legs get tired, until
Me too.
cry, and I'll be the last person in the room. And I worked the room until like 10:30 p.m. I was there at like 1 in the afternoon until 10:30 p.m. And Eugene McVeigh was the last person I met at the Trump International Hotel before I decided to like collect all my business cards and call it a night. And I'm glad I stuck it out because I met an incredible person who has connected me with many political operatives who have put me on their back and are running with me and helping me on this campaign. So a big shout out to Eugene. Thank you so much for all the work that you have done and continue to do. And I look forward to working with you as we continue the campaign to get this district red. Finally.
Yeah, and I'll have you back on. Like I said, I'd like to get you and Jim on together so we can talk about Maxine Waters as well. But Eugene is great, and I'm glad that I got a chance to meet him as well. Thanks for joining us today, America, and my guest, Errol Webber. We were thrilled to have him. We'll see you next time on Indivisible.